Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring this idea of formlessness.
Formlessness.
Yeah, sounds a little abstract, right?
Yeah.
But your sources show it's really about moving, thinking, and reacting with incredible skill, and not just in martial arts, but like in life in general.
Right.
We've got Wu Wei, Mushin, Zanshin, even Bruce Lee's philosophy in the mix. This is going to be really fascinating.
It is. It's really intriguing because when you talk about formlessness, it's not about having no form.
Right.
It's more about being able to transcend the rigid structures and patterns that we get stuck in.
So instead of reacting in a way that's kind of predictable, it's about being adaptable and responding effectively to a situation, almost like improvising.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like a jazz musician riffing on a theme.
Okay.
You have the skills, but you're not limited to them.
Yeah.
And it's really about achieving a flow state where your actions become instinctive, almost automatic.
Okay, so like an athlete who's in the zone making those split-second decisions without overthinking it, or maybe even a surgeon performing a very complex procedure with absolute precision.
Yes. But it goes beyond those peak performance moments too.
Right.
Like imagine just walking through a crowded street.
Yeah.
You're constantly adjusting your path, navigating obstacles without even thinking about it.
Right.
That's formlessness in action too.
That's interesting. Your sources mentioned a few key concepts that can kind of help us understand formlessness a little bit better. Let's start with Wu Wei.
Okay.
Now, isn't that a Taoist idea about non-action?
It is.
Which sounds a little paradoxical to me because how can you achieve anything by doing nothing?
Yeah, it's a concept that throws people off quite a bit.
Yeah.
But Wu Wei is less about passivity and more about aligning yourself with the natural flow of things.
Okay.
It's about acting without forcing or struggling.
Okay.
And that's achieving maximum effect with minimal effort.
So it's more like working with the current as opposed to fighting against it.
Exactly. And this idea is really at the heart of many martial arts.
Okay.
You know, like Tai Chi, for instance,
Uh-huh.
where practitioners redirect an opponent's energy rather than meeting force with force.
I'm starting to see how that effortless action can actually be incredibly effective. So instead of imposing your will on the situation, you're kind of using its own energy to your advantage.
Precisely. And that brings us to another concept that you highlighted.
Okay.
Mushin?
Mushin, or no mind.
Okay. This one sounds very Zen to me.
It is.
Is this about emptying your mind completely? Like striving for total blankness?
It's not about achieving a blank mind.
Okay.
It's about freeing your mind from distractions,
Right.
from the doubts and anxieties and the constant internal chatter that really can get in the way of clear action.
Right.
It's about cultivating a calm and focused state of awareness.
So it's less about not thinking and more about not overthinking.
Exactly.
Like when you're driving home on autopilot,
Yeah.
your body knows the way, even if your mind might be elsewhere.
Right. But instead of zoning out, you're actually hyper-focused on the task at hand.
Yes, we're removing those mental obstacles that prevent you from reacting instinctively and decisively.
Okay, now this might seem to contradict Zanshin a bit, which is about being in a state of relaxed alertness, because it sounds like with Mushin you need to be extra aware, not less.
Right.
So how do those two ideas kind of work together?
That's a great observation.
Yes.
And it highlights the interplay between these concepts.
Okay.
Zanshin is not about being hypervigilant or anxious.
Okay.
It's about maintaining a calm, open awareness even after an action is complete.
Okay.
Think of a wildlife photographer. Even after they've captured the perfect shot,
Right.
they're still attuned to their surroundings, ready for what might come next.
So Mushin is helping you act with clarity in the moment, while Zanshin ensures that you're ready for whatever follows.
Yes.
They're kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
But how do we actually train for this formlessness?
Right.
Your sources mention things like kata and form practice.
Yes. Those are essential elements of training for formlessness. We can dive into those a little bit more in part 2.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these fascinating concepts like Wu Wei and Mushin and Zanshin all kind of pointing to this idea of formlessness.
Right.
But how do we actually cultivate this in our own lives?
Yeah.
You mentioned kata and form practice earlier.
Right.
Those sound pretty intense.
They can be, but they're also incredibly insightful. You see, kata isn't just about mimicking movements.
Okay.
It's about really ingraining those movements into your muscle memory through repetition. It's about building a foundation.
Okay, so like when you learn how to drive a car,
Yeah.
at first you're thinking about every little step, clutch, gas brake, but
Yeah.
eventually it just becomes second nature.
Exactly.
You don't have to think about it.
And kata aims for that same level of effortless execution.
Okay.
But with more complex movements, it's training your body to respond instinctively.
Right.
So your mind is free to focus on strategy and adapt to the situation.
So it's like building those foundational skills to a point where you can react without overthinking.
Right.
You're not stuck in your head trying to remember the steps.
You're not stuck in your head at all.
Yeah.
And as you become more proficient, you can start to improvise, adapt the forms to different situations, just like a jazz musician riffing on a familiar melody.
Okay.
You know, it's about moving beyond those rigid patterns and responding fluidly to whatever comes your way.
That's really cool. So repetition is key here.
Yes.
But it sounds like it has to be mindful repetition.
Absolutely.
Not just going through the motion.
Not just going through the motions. Each repetition is an opportunity to really refine your technique.
Okay.
Understand the nuances of the movement, and even to cultivate that calm, focused state of mind that's so essential for formlessness.
Which brings us to another technique you mentioned, breathing.
Yes.
Now, how does something as simple as breathing help us achieve this state of formlessness?
Well, you'd be surprised how powerful the breath can be. Think about it. When you're stressed or anxious, what happens to your breathing?
It gets really shallow and rapid.
Exactly. It becomes shallow and rapid, and that affects your entire state of being.
Oh, absolutely. I know when I'm feeling overwhelmed, my heart starts racing.
Right.
And I completely forget to breathe properly. It's like my body goes into panic mode.
Exactly. And that fight or flight response is the opposite of what we're trying to achieve with formlessness.
Right.
You know, by consciously controlling your breath.
Okay.
Specifically, using techniques like abdominal breathing. You can actually calm your nervous system and bring yourself back to a state of balance.
So it's not just about getting enough oxygen.
It's not just about the oxygen.
It's about using the breath to actually regulate your mental and emotional state.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Deep, slow breaths send a signal to your body that everything is okay.
Oh.
And that helps reduce stress, improve focus, and ultimately allows you to act with more clarity and precision.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it's something you can do anywhere, anytime.
Anywhere, anytime.
It's like having this built-in tool for managing stress and staying grounded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the beauty of these techniques, kata breathing, is that they not only help cultivate formlessness, but they have benefits that extend far beyond the training hall.
Right.
They equip you with tools to navigate the challenges of everyday life with more grace and resilience.
So we've got repetition, we've got breathing.
Yes.
But what about adaptability? How do we develop that be a water mindset that Bruce Lee emphasized? Because your sources seem to suggest that's a really crucial part of formlessness.
Absolutely.
Adaptability, that's a big one. It feels especially relevant, today when everything's changing so rapidly.
It is.
How do we even begin to cultivate that kind of go with the flow mindset?
Right. It's definitely a skill that's more valuable than ever. Yeah. And it can feel overwhelming at times.
For sure.
But your sources offer some really helpful insights. They point out that one of the major obstacles to adaptability is getting stuck in these rigid patterns of thinking and behavior.
So the routines and the habits that make us feel comfortable could actually be holding us back.
Exactly. When we become too attached to doing things a certain way, we lose that ability to improvise and adjust to new situations.
Okay.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
So how do we break free from those patterns?
Yeah.
Any practical tips for becoming more like water, as Bruce Lee would say?
Well, the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Start noticing those moments when you're clinging to a particular approach, even when it's clearly not working.
Okay.
Ask yourself, am I resisting change? Am I holding on to a plan even though the situation's calling for something different?
So recognize those moments when we're being inflexible.
Yes.
Then what? Do we just throw out all of our plans and routines?
Not necessarily. It's not about abandoning structure altogether.
Right.
It's about being willing to let go of what's no longer serving us.
Okay.
Experiment with new ways of doing things. Challenge your assumptions.
So it's about being open to new possibilities, seeing the situation from different perspectives.
Exactly. And this applies to everything, not just martial arts. Think about a challenging work project.
Okay.
Instead of getting stuck in your usual approach.
Yeah.
What happens if you brainstorm with your team? Or seek out a mentor's advice? Or even just take a break and come back to it with fresh eyes.
Right.
You might discover a completely new solution that you wouldn't have seen otherwise.
That's a great example. So it's not about being passive or just going with the flow.
Right.
It's about being proactive, actively seeking out new information and perspectives.
Yes.
And being willing to adjust our course based on what we learn.
You got it. And that ties back to Wu Wei, that idea of effortless action. You're not forcing a solution.
Right.
You're working with the situation, responding to it in the most effective way possible.
Wow, this has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the core concepts of, Wu Wei, Mushin, Zanshin, to the practical techniques of kata and breathing and the importance of adaptability.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm feeling a lot more formless just from having this conversation.
Me too. It's been a fascinating exploration.
Yeah.
And I think the key takeaway here is that formlessness isn't just about, physical skill or technique.
Yeah.
It's a philosophy, a way of approaching life with more awareness, flexibility, and resilience.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating that mental and emotional agility to navigate whatever challenges come our way.
Yes.
And on that note, I think it's time to bring in the thought-provoking question you had for our listeners.
Yes, let's leave them with something to ponder.
All right, listener, here's a question to consider. How can you apply the principles of formlessness to a specific challenge or goal you're facing right now? Think about it. Could embracing Wu Wei help you approach a difficult decision? Could cultivating Mushin improve your focus during a stressful presentation? Could practicing Zanshin keep you more aware of opportunities in your field?
Those are great examples. And remember, formlessness is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's about constantly challenging ourselves to grow, adapt, and become more effective in all areas of our lives.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.